This is our Disney News Hour, and many thanks for watching us. With the news, I'm Shifarao Lako. Upon the invitation of the President of the Republic of Burundi, Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde has arrived in Bujumbura today for a two-day working visit. The President of Burundi and senior officials of the country warmly welcomed President Sahle-Work Zewde and her delegation upon their arrival. In a press briefing, President Sahle-Work Zewde said, quote, "I am honored to visit Burundi as Ethiopian head of state and committed to working to strengthen relations between the two countries." Accompanied by her Burundian counterpart, President Sahle-Work Zewde laid a wreath commemorating the father of democracy in Burundi. The presidents are expected to discuss bilateral and regional issues to further strengthen relations between Ethiopia and Burundi. The Office of the Prime Minister has appreciated the 10th round dine for Ethiopia depositors who have sent in their deposit slips Stili RMI PLC 10 million birr and Mekuria Basayeguye 10 million birr. The office also encourages all other participating entities to email their deposit slips for 5 million and 10 million birr to dineforethiopia@pmo.gov.et. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has appreciated the irrigation-based summer wheat cultivation in the state of Afar. The Premier has noted that the move in the state is showing great potential for import substitution. Self-reliance is key to our growth, development, and prosperity aspirations, the Premier has said. Now, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Ambassador Dina Mufti, says Ethiopia is fully committed to the implementation of the African Union agenda. He also says Ethiopia is still ready to resolve the border dispute with Sudan peacefully and diplomatically. Kasaun Chane reports.
He has presented the ministry's weekly press briefing, focusing on various diplomatic activities of the ministry. The recently concluded 34th ordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union and the 38th African Union Executive Council meeting, various engagements by the ministry and relevant bodies regarding the humanitarian and rehabilitation efforts in Tigray, including major activities related to economic diplomacy, citizen-centered diplomatic activities, and capacity building of staff members. Regarding the diplomatic activities, the ambassador said that the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ethiopia, Meka Mekonnen, had fruitful discussions with UNDP Assistant Administrator and Regional Director for Africa, Ahuna Iziakona, and the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov.
It will be proper to raise the successful accomplishment of the 38th Executive Council of the African Union and the 44th Assembly of the Head of States, which was hosted by Ethiopia. This assembly has expressed gratitude for Ethiopia's warm welcome of the delegation. The Prime Minister has congratulated the new leadership of the African Union. The DPM and the Foreign Minister also has addressed the Executive Council, whereas he briefed the Executive Council on the law enforcement operation in Ethiopia and the aftermath process of the reconstruction which is going on so far in the country. He had also telephone conversation yesterday with the Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, and he expressed the gratitude for the government of Russia for the support they have been rendering Ethiopia throughout the peace implementation process. And both have discussed about strengthening the bilateral relations between Ethiopia and Russia. And very soon there will be Russia-Africa Summit, which will in fact reinforce the relationship between Russia and the continent.
Ambassador Dina also stated that the 34th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union and the 38th African Union Executive Council meeting were successfully held virtually in the COVID-19 pandemic, and access to the vaccine agenda were the top issues.
Well, these were some of the engagements. To come back maybe to the kernel of the African Union's Assembly is COVID-19 has been on the top of the agenda. As you know, Africa is committed itself to reinforce its positions and arrive at the solution, which is vaccinations of the COVID-19. And Africa is committed to mobilize the resources throughout the world and its own resource as well. Good governance had been also an agenda. Implementation of Agenda 2063 is also another agenda that had been on the top of the African Union.
Dina also stated that President Sahle-Work Zewde briefed the 34th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union on Ethiopia's unwavering commitment to the Union and Ethiopia's stance to peacefully solve the Ethiopia-Sudan border dispute. Besides, the ambassador accentuated that under the motto Rising Ethiopia, the diaspora community is promoting Ethiopia, which receives a stamp of approval from World Travel and Tourism Council, which represents the global travel and tourism.
On the front of the economic diplomacy, as you know, there is a movement known as the Rising Ethiopia, which promotes tourism, culture, investment, marketing, extra. And that had been revised, and it has been decided that it should be reinforced and should continue. Diaspora-focused diplomacy, we have repatriated several Ethiopians from the Middle East this week.
During the occasion, it was also noted that more than 700 Ethiopians were repatriated from Beirut and Saudi Arabia with the government's citizen diplomacy efforts.
The National Disaster Risk Management Commission says 2.5 million people in the state of Tigray are being provided with food and non-food assistance. The Commission, alongside the Agency for Refugees and Returnees Affairs, announced that it has been working tirelessly to fully continue provision of all necessary services for Eritrean refugees. Take a listen.
Some 2.5 million people in Tigray region state are being provided with food and non-food assistance. The number of people in need of help in the state was 1.8 million before the start of the law enforcement operation has now increased to 2.5 million as 780,000 needy joined the list after the operation. Some 890,000 quintals of additional wheat has reached Djibouti port and will be distributed to beneficiaries soon. Various activities were underway to address problems encountered in transporting aid to beneficiaries. In addition to providing food and non-food support, various activities are also being carried out by the Committee on Peace and Reconstruction under the auspices of the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Peace.
Meanwhile, the Agency for Refugees and Returnees Affairs says that it is fully restoring and continuing provisions of all necessary services for Eritrean refugees at Adi Harush and Mai Aini refugee camp, where nearly 70% of in-camp Eritrean refugees reside.
By now, we are glad to inform you that our counterpart, UNHCR, and partners in the likes of IRC, NRC, MSF, and VCT are being to engage in restoring facilities and service in the refuge camps, and the refuge operation is returning to normal conditions. The other two camps, Hizaz and Shimelba, comprising almost 20,000 refugees, are found in areas where there are still some sporadic shootings with last remnants of TPL fighting in guerrilla tactics. Due to this, normal service was not able to resume sooner.
Policy Matters is a conversation platform which aims to provide reasoned analysis and context to the activities, reforms, and policies of the federal government of Ethiopia. Exploring various reforms the government is undertaking, the conversation platform aspires to enable nuanced and informed understanding.
The question being doing it both at the same time, both the privatization of Ethio Telecom, as well as letting 2 new operators come in. Don't you think that's too much to bite?
Yes, this is a huge enterprise. Yes, it takes a huge toll on us, but it's also so important, so critical for the future of this country that it was worth doing it this way.
So having said that, let me ask you this. Since you represent technically the Ministry of Finance, so I'm going to put this question to you. What are you looking at when it comes to this sector, the telecom sector? Is there going to be resources allocated?
If we have to make a difference in Ethiopian economy, the most important thing we must do is to make sure ideas are properly financed for execution. That's what we've been lacking in this country.
You are still watching Addis News Hour. Moving on, the Finnish government has provided aid to projects in Amhara state to help remedy some major problems in the region. The remark came at a discussion held between Amhara state chief and delegation from Finnish embassy in Addis Ababa. The support will go for projects on clean water, land management, education, and agriculture areas in the region. The embassy has also pledged to support the realization of the 10-year development plan in the region. Now, Ethiopia is aggressively working to import up to 9 million COVID-19 vaccines during next 2 months, the Ministry of Health stated. The Health Minister of Ethiopia, Lia Taddese, said that 9 million COVID-19 vaccines will be imported to the country at the end of March or beginning of April 2021. When the minister briefed media on the progress of No Mask, No Service national movement, she stated that screening works are being carried out to identify those who will be given priority in the vaccination drive. Accordingly, the minister said frontline health workers, public health professionals, public transport workers, and some other social workers have been given priority in the vaccination. Now moving to news in connection with the victory of Adwa. Historians suggest the need to work properly include the landslide victory of Adwa in the curriculum system as part of properly promoting it to the current and coming generations. This is in keeping with the historic victory the Battle of Adwa has brought about, breaking the colonial mentality and white supremacy. Alula Teklemariam presents a story as follows.
Adwa still stands as witness to what ordinary Africans can do when they come together as farmers, pastoralists, women and rural people, workers and artists. They were able to score a decisive victory against global colonialist forces. The victory of Adwa is also taken for granted for the solid basement of Pan-African movement. That's why many people agree on its preservation and documentation.
The victory of Adwa has become a springboard for the Pan-African movement. It was a means for Africans to discuss African issues in various global meetings. They first met in London, then in Brussels and in Paris. Gradually, it came back to its origin, Africa, led by Kwame Nkrumah. The main reason was the victory of Adwa, for the colonial mentality was already shattered in the Battle of Adwa. It has therefore become a source of pride for all black people, granting their rights of independence.
Meanwhile, the prominent historian Ahmed Zakaria suggested the need to properly include the victory of Adwa in the curriculum system, keeping in mind the landslide victory it won for the black people.
It is important to ask why we failed to properly include the victory of Adwa in the curriculum. I don't need to go in detail as it needs further research. But the success story is that people begin to develop the sense of ownership towards the victory of Adwa. Even after 125 years, we are witnessing encouraging movement among the people. We have a museum here in Addis Ababa and in Wuchale to help us commemorate and value the victory at different levels. The battle by itself is highly regarded at global level, and there is no power to scrap that glory by any means, and the victory still testifies to the fact that the black won the victory against the so-called civilized white.
These historians called upon Ethiopian citizens to maintain their history, putting aside their differences.
The Vice President of Addis Ababa Islamic Affairs Supreme Council says the guard is no less than the victory of Adwa. In an interview with ETV, the Vice President Sheikh Ali Mohammed has therefore called on Ethiopians to repeat forefathers' unity and determination until the finalization of Ethiopia's flagship project. Sentayo Tamrat presents the story as follows.
In an exclusive interview with ETV, the Vice President of Addis Ababa Islamic Affairs Supreme Council says Ethiopians should unite to speed up the finalization of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. He also mentioned the current high cooperation spirit between government and the public, unlike other times, as a good opportunity to unite public efforts towards national goals.
በደንብ ሊታወቅ የሚገባው የውጭ ኃይሎች እውነት ውሃ ተው አይደለም.
The dam means our eyes. How can we see if we don't have eyes? What Sudan and Egypt are asking us is to give our eyes. No Ethiopian is willing to do so. So we should continue exerting the same concerted effort to finish the dam. In this regard, our enemies have not yet understood that the public has now good attitude towards the incumbent. A few years ago, we all have lost hopes with the then government. So everyone is now showing cooperation with the government in everything the government wants. However, the government should punish the bandits in Ethiopia who are working to accomplish the evil missions of our enemies.
The Vice President also said the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is no less than the victory of Adwa.
የአባይ ግድብ ብሎ ማለት አይናችን ነው.
It is necessary to raise the GERD when we talk about the victory of Adwa, because GERD is no less than Adwa in certain ways. In relation with this, what has to be made clear to foreign forces who assume monopoly of our water is that their concern is never a real shortage of water. So we Ethiopians need to defend this evil interest like we defeated the invaders' interest at Adwa. And this Ethiopian generation should join hands to finish the dam and make history to the posterity.
He also called upon the Islam religious fathers to strengthen the teachings on Ethiopianism and on the Abai River.